have to just give the introduction that he deserves. Jonah Wendt, Communications Director at Advancing American Freedom. AdvancingAmericanFreedom.com is the website. Can't wait to talk to him. Jonah, welcome back to the show.
Stacy, thanks for having me back on. It's great to hear from you again.
Great to hear from you. And there's so much for us to dive into. My gosh, there is some unbelievable good news here. And that is we are now gaining a full understanding of the violations that the Biden administration administered against pro-lifers using the FACE Act. It was under the guise of the FACE Act that they were prosecuting pro-lifers, grandmas and young college students and peaceful prayer warriors and demonstrators. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so when President Trump took office, he ordered the Department of Justice to look into the abuses of the FACE Act. As you know, and just after he took office, I want to say it was actually the day of the March for Life in 2025, President Trump actually pardoned all of the FACE Act victims, so people, pro-lifers who've been unfairly punished by the Biden administration. And he also told the Department of Justice to hey, look into this, what's going on here. And so that they did, and they reviewed over 700,000 records. And this morning they put out an 800-page report detailing how egregious these abuses actually were. So, for example, it turns out that the Biden DOJ actually withheld evidence from defense counsels. They collaborated with pro-abortion groups to track pro-life activists and target them. They went so far as to help pro-abortion groups secure federal funding. They clearly punished pro-lifers much more severely than pro-abortion defendants. And from top to bottom, they just completely violated the rights of pro-life Americans. And this is not a surprise at all to those who've been following the FACE Act for the past few years. We feel completely vindicated.
So it is a vindication because the FACE Act is meant to stop people from infringing on other people's rights. And the people that you're talking about that were prosecuted under the guise of enforcing this law were actually not violating anyone's rights. They were, many of them, just peacefully standing outside of an abortion clinic. Sometimes because of the way the laws are constructed in particular states, you can't even be on the same side of the street as the clinic. So they would be across the street, and some of them weren't protesting at all. Never forget the story of the father. He was raided at his own home with, any number of children. I can't remember if he has 7 children or 8 children, he and his wife. And it's like the crack of dawn, wee hours of the morning. And all of a sudden they're getting like a no-knock raid and he's being arrested in front of his wife and screaming kids. So this was egregious.
Yeah, the Mark Halk raid is particularly egregious, and it makes your skin boil to have when the sun's coming up, the FBI raids his home with long guns. They send in dozens of agents and a couple of cars. Like they're bringing in a drug kingpin for, a father of 7, father of 8. In fact, that case was actually so egregious that Mark Halk, who was the man involved, actually just won a 7-figure settlement against the Biden DOJ.
Okay. I'm not usually in favor of huge settlements, but I feel like he deserved it. He wasn't actually violating the law. That's what makes this so, it's not like they were going after people who were really hardened criminals or, that's what you want to do is you want to deter hardened criminals from infringing on the rights of other Americans. And that just, this was not that. That's not what this was. However we can say it, it doesn't match up with that. So what does the future look like with the FACE Act, and will we see more violations of people's rights?
Yeah, so last year the House Judiciary Committee actually passed legislation out of committee to repeal the FACE Act. That's led by Congressman Chip Roy, who I had the privilege of working with for 5 years. I have a feeling you're going to see a lot more attention to the FACE Act in the wake of this report. For a long time, a lot of pro-lifers thought, this law is written applies equally. So, when we take power, we can enforce it against pro-abortionists, going after pro-life pregnancy centers. I'm ultimately in the camp of I think the FACE Act is unconstitutional. I think it violates the state police powers and also is an egregious abuse of the Commerce Clause. So I think you're going to see a lot more attention on the FACE Act. It's been completely weaponized. It's unconstitutional. It should be repealed.
So I tend to agree with you. I haven't actually seen the FACE Act, in my opinion, applied in a way that is a way that I would say, oh, I'm proud of that law, or I think that law, has merit. Every time I've seen it applied, it's been against people who are actually just exercising their right to freely assemble. And I don't actually think there's a need to have a law like the FACE Act to use against pro-lifers, which is, I think, the reason why it was originally constructed.
Yeah, the FACE Act was originally intended to, quote unquote, protect abortion clinics from pro-life activists. And as they were drafting the legislation, Republicans, in an attempt to poison the entire process, introduced an amendment to protect houses of worship. And Democrats bit the bullet, passed it with that poison pill amendment in it. And so it was actually a complete afterthought that the FACE Act would protect churches. And to date, we've only seen the FACE Act used. And I think they're actually using it right now in Minnesota. But again, you don't need the FACE Act in that situation where you had a bunch of left-wing protesters invade a church. That's called trespassing at the state and local level. You don't need a federal crime. You don't need a federal law to protect churches.
So the repeal would be fantastic. Should I have confidence that this could happen? Like an actual repeal?
Yeah, so the bill's moved out of the House Judiciary Committee, and then so it's looking for the next step is obviously a vote on the House floor. Unfortunately, you got pretty slim margins in the House, and with the upcoming elections, I'm not too sure you're going to see it move, but you might see some saber rattling. And then in the Senate, you've got to get 60 votes, and with only 53 Republicans, it's not looking great. And this is not something that can move in a reconciliation package.
All right, so there's a chance then.
There's a chance.
That's going to happen. All right. So that's good. So what other news? Advancing American freedom, you guys always have a lot of irons in the fire. Anything new that we should know about?
Yeah, we've had a dramatic expansion the past few months. Last week, we put out what we call the One Big Beautiful booklet. And this is a collection of 60 individual memos helping Republicans message on the wins of the One Big Beautiful bill. There's been a lot of talk in Washington about the need for conservatives to get out there and talk about the wins accomplished through cutting taxes and extending a whole lot of positive initiatives through that. And so this is really just giving members of Congress the tools they need to go educate their constituents about the wins that the One Big Beautiful bill delivered.
I love it. All right. So that is something we can get at Advancing American Freedom. And I'm hopeful that we're going to see exactly what you described as far as the repeal of the FACE Act. I'd love to see that. That'd be a great victory, not just for the Trump administration, but for Americans, pro-lifers, taxpayers, all of us, however we describe ourselves, can benefit from that. It's so glad to have you back, Jonah. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Great. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right. Have a wonderful night.